Have you ever laid in bed next to a woman, feeling more alone than when you were by yourself? She's smiling. She's texting. She's saying all the right things, but your gut is telling you something's off. Her warmth feels calculated. Her silence feels strategic. Her compliments feel like currency given when convenient, withdrawn when she wants control. And slowly you begin to question your instincts. You wonder if you're imagining things, if you're overreacting. If maybe you're just not enough. This isn't about villainizing women. It's about what happens when connection becomes performance. When emotional intimacy turns into a game of power, silence, and seduction. And the men, good men, who find themselves trapped, confused, questioning their worth, and walking on eggshells just to feel chosen. I want to talk to you, not as a coach or a critic, but as someone who understands the quiet agony of feeling emotionally toyed with. You're not weak, you're not crazy, you're not broken, but you do need to wake up, because once you can see the game, you don't have to play it. And once you learn to outsmart the woman who plays with your heart, you don't just win her attention, you regain your peace, your clarity, and your self-respect. Let's begin. Let me ask you something, and don't overthink it. Just answer with your body. When was the last time you felt safe with a woman? Not just physically safe, I mean emotionally safe, when you could breathe around her, when her affection didn't feel like a reward for good behavior, when you didn't feel like you were always one wrong text, one delayed reply, one moment of silence away from being iced out, ghosted, or turned into someone she uses to feel powerful. You see, the truth is, some women don't play games to hurt you. They play games to see if you'll play along, to test your emotional threshold, to find out how much of your soul you're willing to bend just to hold on to her attention. And if you're not grounded, if you're not tuned into yourself, you'll spend months, even years, chasing a woman who never planned to meet you halfway. She'll breadcrumb you with flirtation. She'll disappear when you lean in. She'll come closer when you pull back, and then accuse you of inconsistency when you finally have enough. And what breaks my heart is how many men, strong, giving, emotionally available men, get caught in this spiral. They think that if they just love her harder, wait more patiently, hold space for her confusion or chaos, she'll eventually soften. She'll stop testing and start choosing, but it rarely works that way, because here's what you need to understand. Women don't fall in love with doormats, they fall in love with anchors. They don't respect the man who morphs for them. They respect the man who reveals himself, even if it means she doesn't get what she wants. So if you want to outsmart a woman playing games with your heart, it begins with this. You stop trying to win her attention, and you start observing your own behavior. Because the first game isn't even hers. It's yours. It's the one where you try to prove you're worthy of her love without checking if she's even worthy of yours. And that's the first place we start, self-worth. When a man has deep self-worth, he doesn't get seduced by inconsistency. He doesn't get emotionally hijacked by a woman who runs hot and cold. He notices it, he feels the shift. And instead of adjusting himself to please her, he steps back and watches, because a woman playing games wants one thing more than anything, your reaction. She wants to see if you'll flinch, if you'll chase, if you'll panic when she pulls away, if you'll get jealous when she mentions the guy at work who just gets her, if you'll beg for reassurance when she grows silent, and when you do, when you let her mood dictate your stability, you've already lost the game. Because now you're the one dancing for validation, but the man who sees the game for what it is, he doesn't play. Not because he's bitter, not because he's manipulative, but because he doesn't gamble his peace on someone else's emotional immaturity. He's not afraid of losing her because he knows that losing a woman who never truly chose him isn't a loss. It's liberation, and that brings me to the second part of this. When you recognize the game, you stop playing inside of it, and you start leading outside of it. What does that mean? It means you stop trying to fix the relationship from within the dysfunction. You don't try to earn back her affection. You don't try to decode her mixed signals. You don't scroll back through your texts wondering where you went wrong. You step out of the arena altogether. You lead with emotional clarity. A man who leads doesn't threaten to leave to get her to behave. He just leaves when he sees she's not ready for something real. He doesn't punish her silence by ignoring her longer. He just recognizes that silence isn't intimacy. It's control. He doesn't need her to apologize before he moves on. Because the closure he needs isn't her regret, it's his own decision, and here's what happens when you stop chasing the woman who plays games. She becomes confused, not because you did something wrong, but because her script no longer works. Her rhythm doesn't sway you. Her withdrawal doesn't make you come closer. Her "I don't know what I want" doesn't keep you frozen in place anymore. And this is where the dynamic shifts, not into revenge, not into manipulation, but into a revelation of your own power. Because here's the secret most men never get told. The woman who plays games is often just testing for leadership. She doesn't want someone who obeys her emotional whims. She wants someone who can contain them. Someone who can say, "No, this doesn't work for me," without anger, without begging, without falling apart. Someone who can walk away not to punish her, but to protect himself. This is not about being colder. It's about being clearer, and the clearer you become, the less games you attract. Or rather, the more quickly you disqualify the women who play them. But that clarity, it doesn't come from analyzing her behavior. It comes from understanding your emotional history. You see, the reason these games hurt so much is because they echo something older, something deeper. Maybe it's the mother who was emotionally inconsistent. Maybe it's the first girl you loved who ghosted you without explanation. Maybe it's the belief that love has to be chased, proven, earned, so every time a woman pulls away, you panic, not because of her, but because it taps into a memory of rejection that you never healed. So part of outsmarting the game is knowing your triggers, knowing why silence feels like abandonment, why emotional distance makes you overfunction, why you feel compelled to win her back instead of asking yourself, "Do I even want her back?" This is the work that men don't often get invited into, not because they're not capable, but because we live in a culture that rarely encourages men to slow down and feel. But I'm inviting you now, not just to understand her games, but to understand your own wiring, because that's where true power lies, not in controlling her, but in regulating yourself. And that is where the real transformation begins. When you realize that no woman, not the hottest one, not the most magnetic one, not even the one who once made you feel like a god, has the power to shrink your worth unless you hand her the remote. The moment you take it back, the moment you say, "This doesn't feel emotionally safe, and I don't need to stay here," you shift the entire energy. You're no longer the one being played. You become the one who decides if the game is even worth watching. And most of the time it's not. It's not about becoming unfeeling. It's about learning how to feel without folding. Most men are not emotionally numb. They're emotionally overwhelmed. They feel deeply, but they've been taught to keep it quiet, to solve it logically, to stay cool. But when a woman plays games, her chaos pulls you into a different realm, one where logic doesn't work, and silence doesn't bring peace. And that's where a man begins to unravel. You start second, guessing what you already knew. You rewrite conversations in your head. You replay how you responded when she said, "I'm just not ready for anything serious right now." But her eyes said something else. Her body leaned in, her words created distance, but her energy invited you closer. That contradiction is not just confusing, it's intoxicating. It makes you chase clarity where none exists, and that's the trap, because what she's offering is not intimacy. It's emotional suspense, just enough connection to keep you interested, just enough withdrawal to keep you desperate. Just enough, ambiguity to make you believe you're the one who needs to work harder. But let me tell you something. When a woman is emotionally safe, emotionally stable, and emotionally honest, you never have to decode her love. You never feel like you're in a maze searching for the next clue. You feel seen, not studied. You feel chosen, not tolerated. You feel invited, not manipulated. So if you're in something that feels more like a puzzle than a partnership, ask yourself this: why am I still trying to win someone who doesn't even know if she wants me? That's not love. That's emotional gambling, and it's time to step out of the casino, because here's what I want you to remember. Emotional games only work on the man who is afraid to lose. And the man who is afraid to lose is usually the man who believes this is the best he can get. That belief doesn't come from her. It comes from you. Somewhere deep inside, you've convinced yourself that this woman, despite her flakiness, her confusion, her inability to meet you emotionally, is still the prize. And if she's the prizer, then you'll naturally think you must be the pursuer. But what if I told you she's not the prize? Your peace is. Your peace is what you protect. Your peace is what you should prize. Because any woman who makes you question your sanity, your worth, or your ability to be loved in a secure way isn't offering love. She's offering a roller coaster, and even if the highs are intoxicating, the lows will break you over time. That's why the man who outsmarts emotional games doesn't just walk away from the chaos. He rebuilds his internal compass. He stops seeking emotional adrenaline and starts seeking emotional safety. And here's the surprising part. When a man becomes safe with himself, women feel it. The woman who used to play hot and cold with you starts behaving differently. Not because you did anything dramatic, but because you're no longer reactive. Yourself, worth no longer swings with her moods. You don't try to impress her anymore. You express yourself, and that kind of energy, that kind of calm certainty, it changes everything, because now she's the one who's unsure how to control you, unsure if you still need her validation, unsure if she can still push the same buttons and get the same results. And that, ironically, is what wakes some women up. Because when the game stops working, they realize the only way to reach you now is with truth. That's the man you become. Not the player, not the pursuer, but the mirror. A mirror that shows her what she actually brings to the table. Not what she says she brings, but how her behavior impacts someone who sees clearly. And here's the thing. A woman can lie to herself for a long time, but she can't lie to a man who sees her patterns. She can't manipulate the man who knows his worth. She can't dominate the one who doesn't fear being alone. And that's the power you step into, not by being alpha, not by being cold, but by being clear. Clear in your values, clear in your boundaries, clear in what emotional safety means to you, because at the end of the day, the woman who plays games is often not trying to hurt you. She's trying to feel powerful. She's learned, maybe through her own trauma, that intimacy is dangerous. That closeness is control, that being open makes her vulnerable, so she pulls away when things get real. She tests your patience. She creates distance just to feel safe, and while that may explain her behavior, it doesn't excuse it. You're not her therapist, you're not her savior, and love is not rehab, so if she's not ready to meet you with consistency, then don't bend yourself trying to accommodate confusion. Because the moment you do, you enter a contract that was never mutual, one where you give endlessly, hoping that one day she'll finally recognize your worth. But let's be honest, if she can't see your value now when you're showing up, when you're present, when you're offering depth, then dragging her to clarity is not love. It's self-abandonment, and that's what we want to break. You don't need to fix her, you need to choose you. Choose your emotional safety, choose your dignity, choose the version of you that doesn't beg for crumbs when you know you're capable of serving a feast. Because here's the truth I want you to hold on to. A woman who truly values you will never make you doubt your value. She may challenge you, she may be strong, she may have her own walls, but you'll feel her effort, you'll feel her sincerity. You'll feel her presence, even when it's messy, even when it's slow. You'll feel her choosing you, and when you don't feel that, when you feel pulled in 1,000 emotional directions, that's not a sign to chase, that's a sign to pause, to breathe, to get quiet enough to ask, is this love, or is this just chaos disguised as chemistry? And in that stillness you'll know. You'll feel it in your gut, in the tension that eases, in the truth that rises, in the way your heart exhales when you finally decide, I will not play this game anymore. Because love isn't a game and you're not a pawn. You are a man worthy of peace, clarity, and connection that doesn't require you to shrink yourself in order to feel seen. That's how you outsmart the woman who plays games with your heart, by refusing to play, and by finally choosing the only person who's always been waiting for your attention to you. There's a sacred moment when a man stops performing, not just for her, for the world, for the old wounds that told him he had to earn love to be worthy of it. It happens quietly. Maybe it's after another night of replaying her silence, or another dinner where you spoke and she scrolled, or another morning where you woke up next to her body, but felt like her soul had already packed its bags. And finally something inside you says no more, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in tiredness. The kind of tired that comes from giving too much of yourself to a woman who never gave you her real self in return. And in that quiet breaking there's a rebirth, because now you stop waiting for her to validate your existence. You stop craving her approval like oxygen. You stop seeing her confusion as a challenge and start seeing it as a mirror reflecting all the parts of you that still thought you had to play small to be loved big, and you begin slowly, gently, to return to yourself. That's how you win, not by being colder, not by learning to manipulate back, but by becoming deeply, uncompromisingly loyal to your emotional reality. You learn to listen to your nervous system. Does she calm you, or does she activate your anxiety? Does she inspire depth, or does she exhaust your soul? Does she add to your peace, or does she make you fight for it every single day? Because the man who wins at love is not the one who gets the most attention. He's the one who knows what to walk away from, and this is the beautiful paradox. The moment you're willing to walk away from anyone who costs you your clarity is the moment the game ends. Because now you're not reacting to her, you're responding to you, to your values, your intuition, your truth. You stop chasing closure from her because you realize you were never seeking answers from her. You were seeking answers from the version of yourself that didn't yet know how to choose peace over passion. Let me say something to you that no one probably has. You don't have to earn love you never did. The idea that you have to become more to finally be loved was planted in you by pain. Maybe it was the emotionally unavailable mother who only smiled when you performed. Maybe it was the high school love who dangled attention like a prize. Maybe it was a world that told you your masculinity had to be constantly proven to be accepted. But not anymore. You've grown, you've seen too much, felt too much, lost too much of yourself in relationships where almost was sold as love. You don't need another almost. You don't need to prove you're strong by enduring inconsistency. You don't need to demonstrate your loyalty by waiting for someone who weaponizes absence. You don't need to be the emotional punching bag for a woman still bleeding from her own unhealed wounds. What you need is you, the you who trusts your gut, the you who knows peace is the greatest wealth a man can build, the you who chooses softness within, not to be weak, but to finally rest from the war of trying to be enough. And when you become that man, the games stop, because they can't touch you anymore, they can't bait you. They can't trigger you, they can't convince you that you're the problem. You've stopped asking, how do I get her to choose me? And you've started asking, is she even capable of seeing me? That shift is everything, because the man who makes that shift stops outsourcing his emotional life to a woman who doesn't know what to do with it. He stops performing intimacy and starts demanding authenticity. He stops tolerating confusion and starts creating boundaries that don't need explanations. And yes, some women will leave when you become this man, not because you did something wrong, but because you're no longer emotionally profitable. You no longer serve their need to feel adored while giving crumbs. You no longer feed the drama with your panic, or the silence with your begging, or the inconsistency with your tolerance. And when they leave, let them, not with anger, with grace, because their exit only clears the space for someone who doesn't need to be convinced to love you right. And that's when something extraordinary happens. You begin attracting women who don't want to play games. Women who speak directly, women who are emotionally responsible, women who say what they mean and mean what they say. Women who are safe not because they're boring, but because they're no longer addicted to emotional chaos. And you begin to realize the most magnetic woman in the room is not the one who makes you chase. It's the one who gives you peace. And the most attractive thing about you is no longer how good you are at fixing, chasing, or enduring. It's your refusal to abandon yourself ever again. This is the truth they never told you. You don't outsmart the woman who plays games by playing smarter games. You outsmart her by not needing the game at all. You outsmart her by no longer needing her attention to feel alive. You outsmart her by walking into every room, every conversation, every connection with one unshakable truth at your core. I don't chase emotional chaos anymore, I choose emotional clarity. And when you choose that, truly the game collapses, because you've already won, not her, you. There's a kind of silence that doesn't feel like peace, it feels like punishment. You know the one I'm talking about. It's not the soft quiet after a long, connected conversation. It's the sharp, strategic silence after you've said something vulnerable, and she leaves it hanging in the air as if your truth didn't deserve a reply. She reads your message. She doesn't respond. Or worse, she responds 2 days later with a casual, hey, smiling face with smiling eyes. As if nothing happened, and you're supposed to just resume orbiting her world like a loyal satellite. And maybe you do, not because you're weak, but because that silence triggers something ancient in you, the fear of being discarded, the ache of being forgotten, the panic that maybe you said too much, cared too much, wanted too much. But here's the thing, that silence, it's not just hers, it's yours too. It's the silence of all the moments you didn't speak up when something didn't feel right. All the times you laughed off the disrespect, all the days you told yourself, she's just confused, when really you were the one becoming confused. And confusion is the enemy of clarity. You don't need to become a detective in your own relationship. You don't need to analyze emojis like sacred texts or decode why she's suddenly busy every weekend but somehow still finds time to post thirst traps online. You need to pause, not to figure her out but to hear yourself again, because there's a part of you still intact, still wise, still deeply intuitive, that already knows. She's not loving you. She's managing you, and a man who is being managed cannot rise. He survives, he adjusts. He makes himself small enough to fit her comfort zone, even when his soul was built for more. But what happens when that man wakes up? When he realizes that a relationship where he feels anxious more than he feels adored is not a relationship worth keeping. Something powerful, he begins to reclaim what he gave away, not just his time, his emotional dignity. The dignity of not having to ask, what are we? The dignity of not needing to remind someone how to treat him. The dignity of saying, I don't feel safe here, and meaning it. That's when the shift happens, because emotional safety is not just a buzzword. It's the foundation, it's the soil where real love grows. And if she doesn't know how to create that soil, or worse, if she thrives in emotional unpredictability, You'll always be loving with your hands tied. So let me ask you, why are you still binding yourself to someone who only shows up when it's convenient? Why are you still trying to heal a woman who doesn't even admit she's bleeding? Why are you confusing tension with attraction and inconsistency with depth? You don't need more tolerance, you need more truth, and the truth is this: you deserve to be loved in a way that doesn't make you question your reality every other week. Because love doesn't come wrapped in confusion, it comes through consistency, through action, through transparency, through mutual effort, through someone looking you in the eyes not when they want something, but because they see you, even when there's nothing to gain. That's what real love feels like: safe, not boring, not performative, not transactional, safe where you don't need to hide your softness just to feel respected, where you don't have to constantly be interesting just to hold her attention, where silence becomes sacred space, not a power play. But to have that kind of love, you must become the man who stops entertaining women who aren't ready for it. You stop rationalizing the red flags, you stop calling chaos chemistry, you stop believing that love should feel like a game you're constantly trying not to lose. And instead you begin practicing presence with yourself, presence in how your body reacts when she disappears after intimacy, presence in how your stomach clenches when she flirts with other men to test your reaction, presence in how you shrink every time she withholds affection and says, "You're just being too sensitive." That sensitivity, it's your intelligence. It's the part of you that still has access to emotional truth. Don't numb it, don't override it, don't shame it, let it speak. Let it remind you that emotional games are not a test you have to pass, they're a loop you have to exit. Because when you exit the loop, you exit the identity that kept you stuck in it, the identity that said, "I have to prove I'm worth loving." No, you don't. You are worthy, you always were, and the moment you stop proving it, you start embodying it, and that, my dear man, is when she loses her power over you. Not because she's evil, not because you now hate her, but because her game only worked on the version of you who thought love had to be earned through struggle. You're not that man anymore. Now you choose love that doesn't make you anxious. You choose words that match actions. You choose a woman who doesn't flirt with your insecurities to feel powerful. You choose peace not because it's easy, but because you've finally learned that without it, no love can grow. There comes a moment when you stop asking, "Does she still want me?" and you start asking, "Why did I ever give someone so inconsistent that kind of access to my heart?" That question, that's the beginning of healing, because you're not just healing from her, you're healing from you, the version of you who normalized that kind of emotional starvation, the version that confused attention with affection, that mistook intermittent praise as love, that settled for a connection that had just enough sweetness to keep you hoping and just enough withdrawal to keep you insecure. Let me be honest with you, the woman playing games with your heart isn't always cruel. Sometimes she's just lost. She's still reacting from her own wounds. She never learned how to trust love that wasn't dramatic. She doesn't know how to receive a man who doesn't need fixing. So she does the only thing she knows. She creates tension to feel alive. But understanding her pain doesn't mean you stay in it. Compassion does not require self-sacrifice. You can see her pain and still walk away from it. You can understand her trauma and still say, "I'm not responsible for healing this for you." Because when you confuse empathy with endurance, you end up building a home inside someone else's emotional storm. And no matter how much love you pour into it, the roof will always leak. The truth is, some people don't want connection. They want control, not because they're evil, but because it's what they were taught. So when you show up with honesty, with calm, with consistency, they don't feel safe. They feel exposed, and instead of rising to meet you, they pull you down into their familiar chaos. Because chaos is where they feel powerful, but you don't have to meet her there. You don't need to join her confusion to prove you care. You don't need to make peace with dysfunction just to feel loved. You need to protect your own emotional environment. Because what you allow into your space, into your mind, your body, your heart shapes you. And when you constantly allow inconsistent love into your space, you begin to see yourself through the lens of that inconsistency. You begin to doubt your worth, you question your instincts, you lose the quiet confidence that once made you magnetic. So if you've lost that confidence, come back to it, not by performing, by remembering. You were never meant to perform for love. You were meant to participate in it, to co-create it with someone equally present, equally willing, equally clear. That kind of woman, she won't need to test you to feel secure. She won't weaponize her silence. She won't punish you with distance. She'll communicate. She'll say, "I feel scared," instead of pretending she doesn't care. She'll say, "I need space," without disappearing for 3 days to make you chase her. She'll say, "I want you," without making you earn her every time you get close. And until that kind of woman arrives, your job is not to lower your standards. Your job is to protect your energy so that when real love knocks, you're not too depleted to answer the door. Because that's the thing most men don't realize. Every time you entertain a woman who plays games, you exhaust a part of your soul that was meant for real connection. And real connection isn't loud. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or chaos. It doesn't leave you confused or needy or scrambling. It feels like exhaling after holding your breath for years. It feels like a place where your softness isn't mocked, your depth isn't too much, and your masculine presence is welcomed, not tested. But to receive that kind of love, you have to first become that kind of man, a man who no longer reacts to games, a man who no longer thinks that love must come wrapped in struggle, a man who isn't afraid to walk away the moment his peace is compromised. That man doesn't need to outsmart a woman, because he no longer engages with a woman who makes him feel like love is something he must win. He doesn't need strategies, he doesn't need tactics, he just stands in his truth, unapologetic, calm, clear, and in that stillness he becomes untouchable, not cold, not unreachable, but immune to the kind of love that costs him his sense of self. And that, my dear man, is the real win, not getting her to change, not getting her to stay, but getting you to stay true to you. Because the most powerful shift you'll ever make is this: you stop making her the center of your emotional universe, and you return to your own gravity. You remember that your love is a gift, not a bribe. Your time is sacred, not an audition. Your presence is valuable, not a placeholder. And the woman who's truly ready, she won't need to test you to see it. She'll feel it, she'll honor it. She'll rise to meet it, because that's what emotionally mature women do. They don't play games. They build kingdoms with men who no longer chase, but lead. There's a quiet revolution that begins the day you no longer seek love as a way to fill your wounds, but as a space to grow beside someone who respects your wholeness. And that revolution, it doesn't happen in a dramatic exit. It doesn't require anger. It doesn't demand revenge. It simply begins the moment you decide to stop betraying yourself, not for her, not for anyone, because for too long you made your emotional life dependent on someone else's readiness. You built your confidence on whether or not she answered. You let her ambiguity mold your worth, and you called that love. But love, real love, doesn't blur your boundaries. It blesses them. It doesn't confuse your intuition. It strengthens it. It doesn't exhaust your nervous system. It calms it, so you don't need to win anymore. You don't need to make her regret losing you. You don't need to manipulate the manipulator. That's just another game, one where everyone ends up lonelier in the end. No, what you need now is presence, presence with yourself. Presence with the truth that you deserve love that doesn't turn you into a strategist, a beggar, or a boy seeking approval. You deserve a woman who chooses you out loud, not just when it's easy, not just when she's bored or lonely, not just when she needs reassurance that she can still have you, but always. And more than that, you deserve a relationship where you don't have to wonder if you're too much or not enough. So, how do you outsmart a woman who plays games with your heart? You stop trying to be smarter than her, and you start being truer to you. Because when a woman plays games, she's trying to get you to react, to prove your love, to lose your center. And when you don't, when you choose stillness over scrambling, clarity over chaos, dignity over drama, she loses interest. Not because you won, but because you're no longer compatible with her confusion. You've outgrown the roller coaster. You've remembered your anchor, and the man who lives from that anchor, he doesn't chase, he doesn't beg. He doesn't perform, he creates space for the kind of love that doesn't play games at all. And if no one has ever said this to you, let me say it now, you are allowed to want more. You are allowed to walk away from a woman who triggers your trauma more than she nurtures your soul. You are allowed to expect emotional maturity. You are allowed to rest in a relationship. You are allowed to be loved without constantly needing to prove you're worthy of it. And when that woman comes, the one who doesn't make you question your sanity, your stability, or your sacred softness, don't question it. Receive it with open hands, with a peaceful heart, with the confidence of a man who finally knows. He doesn't need to win love that is meant for him. Because love, real love, doesn't ask you to play games. It asks you to show up, and the woman who's ready for that. She won't test you to see if you'll stay. She'll stand beside you because she's already decided she wants to. No games, no chase, no confusion, just two people finally ready to stop surviving love and start living it.